Dave Talks Comics, Episode 12. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com. My email address is dave@davetalkscomics.com, and my Twitter handle is Kilmarok. On this episode of Dave Talks Comics, I talk about All-Star Squadron number 25 and number 26. These are the 5th and 6th installments of the Ultra Epic. All-Star Squadron takes place during World War II on Earth-2, prior to Crisis on Infinite Earths. This story, the Ultra Epic, has not been reprinted, although these two issues, numbers 25 and 26, were included in the Infinity Inc. Generation Saga collection. Most of the back issues of the Ultra Epic can be found for very reasonable prices. The most expensive issue of the lot is number 25, which is the first appearance of Infinity Inc. I talked about the first two installments of the Ultra Epic in episode 9, and the third and fourth installments in episode 10 of Dave Talks Comics. I talk from my notes on these comics. I don't go panel by panel. I try to do more than just summarize the stories. This is not a spoiler-free podcast. Dave Talks Comics is not a member of the Spoiler-Free Podcast Network. I try not to spoil everything, but in the process of talking about these comics, I will definitely spoil them in some ways. All-Star Squadron number 25. The Infinity Syndrome by Roy Thomas, Jerry Ordway, and Mike Machlan, who are the writer, penciler, and inker, respectively. The cover date for this is September 1983. Okay, this issue opens with a splash page that features the Justice Society, who are sitting around a table at the War Department and listening to a radio broadcast, a report about the Ultra-Humanite. But the scene quickly shifts back to New York, back to the World's Fairgrounds, where the All-Star Squadron, specifically Batman and Robin, Liberty Bell, Tarantula, Green Lantern, the Atom, and Commander Steel are fighting Amazing Man. And Amazing Man was captured by the Atom and Dr. Fate in issue 23, I believe. And they brought him to the Trilon and Perisphere at the World's Fairgrounds, the All-Star Squadron's new headquarters. And while the All-Stars were discussing what to do next, he managed to break free. So the next few pages are a fight between him and the All-Stars, which is a pretty good. He makes pretty good work of the All-Stars. He manages to take out Green Lantern and give them a real run for their money. And actually, it isn't until he learns that the Ultra-Humanite has targeted his hometown of Detroit that he gives in and says, "Okay, look, I was going along with Ultra up to a point, but I'm not going along with him if he's going to take down Detroit." So that's part one of this issue. And this issue is broken into 4 parts. And part one, I guess it's called the Infinity Syndrome. I don't know. This part really isn't given a title, and actually it isn't denoted as part 1. But the next segment of the story is called part 2. And it is a free-for-all grows in Brooklyn, and it guest stars the Guardian. And the Guardian was this hero who was created by, I believe, Simon and Kirby, Jack Jack Kirby, and I'm forgetting what Simon's first name was. Okay, anyway. Created by Simon and Kirby back in the 40s, and he's this guy who wears these blue and gold trunks, tights, and carries this weird-shaped shield, which kind of looks like a badge, and has a kind of a steel dome on his helmet, for a helmet. And he was always featured with the Newsboy Legion. And they made some comeback appearances, I believe, in Jimmy Olsen, when Jack Kirby was drawing Jimmy Olsen back in the 70s, I think. And there's certainly reprints of the Guardian and the Newsboy Legion out there. And as I said, they kind of appeared together. So he was kind of their guardian angel, I guess you could say. Anyway, so they figured out that the Ultrahumanite is targeting these various locations, and so the All-Stars have broken up and are going to these locations to try to prevent whatever it is that the Ultrahumanite is going to do. Now, it turns out that the Guardian was already at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and while he's kind of guarding the area, a couple of these characters show up, and this is Infinity Inc. These are people from Infinity Inc. And Infinity Inc., as will be revealed, is a team that comes from the future, just like Brainwave Jr. does, who I spoke about on a previous episode. And so the two that appear in Brooklyn are the Silver Scarab and Machlan. And they kind of start to smash things up, and let's see, who shows up? Commander Steel and Liberty Bell show up to help out the Guardian, try and take on these two and prevent them from doing damage or destroying these ships that are being built to help in the war effort. But when they grab the Infinity Inc. folk, the Silver Scarab and Machlan, they disappear. So at one point, Liberty Bell grabs the Silver Scarab, and all of a sudden she starts disappearing. And then the same thing happens to Commander Steel when he grabs Machlan, which leaves the Guardian kind of standing there wondering what happened. So part 3 is called Out of the Sky, and this takes place in Los Angeles at an airplane plant where they're building, it looks like, bombers. And Batman and Robin and Tarantula have been dispatched there. And there they also meet, unknown to them, Sandra Knight, who is also known as the Phantom Lady. So, once again, a couple more members of Infinity Inc. show up. In this case, it's Northwind and Fury. And so Sandra Knight changes into Phantom Lady and helps the other two, or the other three, the Tarantula, Batman, and Robin, fight Fury and Northwind. But once again, when Tarantula and Batman try to confront them, grab them, physically put their hands on Fury and Northwind, they find themselves disappearing, which leaves Phantom Lady and Robin in shock as to what just happened. And actually what's kind of revealed here, and I think was revealed in the previous part, was that not only are some of the All-Stars disappearing, but somebody's appearing in their place, although they don't show you who that is at this point. So part 4 is Green Light, Black Shadow. Okay, and so in this case, it's Green Lantern and Amazing Man and the Atom, who have traveled to Detroit to defend another war plant where they're building tanks. And in this case, they encounter Jade and Obsidian, also of Infinity Inc. So they try to, once again, defend the plant against them, but once again, when the Atom and Green Lantern grab Jade and Obsidian, they disappear, and somebody shows up in their place. But once again, you're left with this final panel of just somebody, in this case it's Amazing Man, staring, saying, what, huh? Who the hell are you? So then the final page in this issue is devoted to Brainwave Jr., who's finally waking up after being knocked out after his encounter with Tarantula in the previous issue, and encountering Tarantula's housekeeper, Olga, and realizing that he's got to get out of there. He's got to do something. So he smashes through the wall and he takes off. And that's the end of this issue. So it's an interesting issue, but there's a lot of setup in this issue, and there's some interesting confrontations. Probably my favorite is the fight between Amazing Man and the All-Stars in the first part of the story. And there's a few panels there that I think I might scan and include in the episode notes. But so this issue, once again, is a lot of setup for what's going to come next. And before I get to issue 26, I just wanted to highlight a couple things from the letters page. So on the letters page, you get a complimentary letter from Sheldon Mayer, who was one of the original artists of the Justice Society from the 1940s run of All-Star Comics, which I think Roy Thomas prints in its entirety. It doesn't look like there's any ellipsis in this letter. And you also get some notes from Roy Thomas about the New York World's, the 1939-1940 New York World's Fairgrounds. And he also promises more details about Infinity Inc. in the next issue. The only other thing I want to say about issue 25 is this cover is yet another case of misdirection. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even bother to point these kinds of things out because it's so common back then that they would put things on the cover. I think this still happens today, but I don't know if it's to the same degree. But they would put things on the cover that weren't exactly accurate. And in this case, it's the All-Stars facing off against Infinity Inc., all 6 of Infinity Inc. facing against 6 All-Stars, although and 5 of them are All-Stars who I mentioned is disappearing in this issue. The one who's missing is Batman, but in his place is Amazing Man. And Brainwave Jr. is also on the cover, and he didn't figure in any of the fights, really, although he did appear in the final page of the story in this issue. So that's it for issue 25. All-Star Squadron number 26, Talons Across Time, written by Roy Thomas, penciled by Jerry Ordway, and inked by Mike Machlan. The cover date on this issue is October 1983. And the quote, and I haven't been reading these, but there are quotes at the beginning that Roy Thomas chose to include at the beginning of each issue, is "as if you could kill time without injuring eternity," which is from Henry David Thoreau, although he doesn't indicate where he wrote this, whether this is from Walden or another source, another writing of Thoreau's. So this issue kind of picks up and reveals a lot of stuff as far as what was happening at the end of each of those fights in issue 25. So at the end of each of those fights at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, at the Los Angeles airplane plant, and at the Detroit tank plant, some of the All-Stars disappeared and somebody was appearing in their place, but it wasn't clear who. So this one starts in Los Angeles at the airplane plant. And you see on the first page is a splash page showing Batman and Tarantula disappearing, Robin and the Phantom Lady are running up and trying to figure out what's going on. And then somebody appears in the place of Batman and Tarantula, and they are Vulcan, Son of Fire, and the Mist. and they start to, and at the same time, the Fury and Northwind of Infinity Inc. collapse. They pass out. And so Phantom Lady and Robin are left to fight the Mist and Vulcan, Son of Fire. And I really like this fight. I mean, Phantom Lady really more or less takes down the Mist. And it's a pretty cool fight. It's pretty cool how she does it. She's not quite as successful with Vulcan, Son of Fire. And so, and that ends after a few pages. Then it flashes to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, where Liberty Bell and Commander Steele disappeared and were replaced by the Psycho Pirate and Brainwave. And this is Brainwave of the future, so he does not look like the Brainwave who appeared in issues 19 and 20, although it is the same person, just his future self. And they don't. This segment only lasts a page. They don't really do a whole lot. They knock out the Brainwave knocks out the Guardian, and Psycho Pirate uses his powers on the Newsboy Legion to make them all scared. But that's about it. And then finally in Detroit, the Green Lantern and the Atom disappear and are replaced by the Monocle and the Rag Doll. And they start to do some damage, and Amazing Man kind of chips in and busts up a tank, and says, "Hey, I'm with you," and so then the scene shifts, and you jump back to this hospital where Johnny Quick was taken when he was injured. I believe it was in issue 23 or 24 when he was trying to rescue some of the people or try to prevent the damage to the Normandy. And so Brainwave Jr. shows up at his hospital room, and they end up going to the Trilon and the Perisphere, and where they meet up with the Flash and and Wildcat, plus the Guardian and Robin and the Phantom Lady. And actually, these make up all of the heroes that you see on the cover of this issue, which I really like. And I think I don't know if it's the best cover design-wise, but it's kind of a cool cover with the heroes rushing the front, led by the Flash. This is Jay Garrick, the Flash of Earth 2. And flanked by Robin, the Phantom Lady, the Guardian, Wildcat, and Johnny Quick. And I just really like the drawings, the facial expressions. I think it's a really cool cover. Not the best design-wise, but I think it's a cool cover. I like it. And so they're discussing what to do and meeting. And since Brainwave Jr. is there, they've got all the captured members of Infinity Inc. who are still unconscious. And Brainwave Jr. Reveals who they are, identifies them by name. And which makes them kind of suspicious, which makes the All-Stars kind of suspicious as to his true loyalties. So he starts dishing information and revealing things, and he talks about another story which appeared in JLA 195 to 197, in which the Ultrahumanite of the future, who is the Ultrahumanite that looks like a giant white ape. I don't know if I should say albino ape, but it's certainly a giant white ape, which is the way the Ultrahumanite was shown in the JLU cartoon. Teamed up with villains from, I think both Earth 1 and Earth 2, or maybe they were all Earth 2 villains, to battle the Justice Society and the Justice League. And I thought it was a really cool story. And he also explains the origin of Vulcan, Son of Fire, which came from All-Star Comics number 61. So if you want some more reading, I think that's definitely somewhere worth going. Now, it's a little unclear to me how Brainwave Jr. knew about all this, but he seems to know it all, and of course you need somebody to explain what's going on. And it's more than just that he knows about these fights that the JLA and the JSA had with Vulcan, Son of Fire, and the Ultrahumanite, and all of these villains who I mentioned before who appeared, Psycho Pirate, the Monocle, the Ragdoll, the Mist, Brainwave. So it's unclear to me how he knows about all this, but it's also unclear how he knows that that the Ultrahumanite of the future somehow managed to contact the Ultrahumanite of the past. And together they hatched this plan, or as one they hatched this plan, which involved brainwashing the members of Infinity Inc. into fighting for the Ultrahumanite and wrecking damage in the past and traveling to the past. But it's unclear how Brainwave Jr. knew all this, let alone how he traveled to the past. And he doesn't reveal it explicitly to the All-Star Squadron, but what he does reveal in his thoughts and thought balloons is that the members of Infinity Inc. are the sons and daughters of adopted and biological of members of the Justice Society, although he doesn't give a breakdown of exactly who's related to whom at this point. So after a few pages, several pages of exposition from Brainwave Jr., the All-Stars basically decide that they have to attack the Ultrahumanite and his people on their turf. And I believe at this point they figure out exactly where the Ultrahumanite is, that he's in Washington State. I believe it's Washington State, Mount St. Helens, which at the time that this comic book was coming out, this comic book came out just after, or around the time, maybe a year after that Mount St. Helens erupted, which you can look back in the history books and read about that. So the All-Stars are coming, are traveling to to Mount St. Helens, to this underground lair of the Ultrahumanites to attack the Ultrahumanite and his people. And after they leave, the members of Infinity Inc. wake up, and so they're going to go and do that. They're also taking off to go there. And then the final panel is the Ultrahumanite somehow knows at this point that they're on their way, and it's kind of let them come. I've set in motion what I've set in motion. No man or group of men may hope to overturn. And so that's it for issue 26. Now the story is going to be concluded in All-Star Squadron Annual number 2. But before we go on to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about, there's not really a letters page here, but there is a half page of notes from Roy Thomas explaining that Jerry Ordway is going to be leaving All-Star Squadron following Annual 2, which is going to wrap up this storyline. He also talks about a 6-issue miniseries, which will chronicle the history of the Justice Society of America, which, to my knowledge, never materialized. And Jerry Ordway was supposed to be the artist on that, the penciler. Now, there was a miniseries called America versus the Justice Society, but that wasn't really the history of the Justice Society. That was kind of about why the Justice Society went away, why it disappeared after a certain point. Through the 50s, it didn't exist, and I believe it was something like 47 was the last issue of All-Star Comics that featured the Justice Society, because after that, All-Star Comics became All-Star Western, I believe. Although then there was a revival of All-Star Comics in the 1970s, which picked up the numbering. So anyway, that's about it for this issue, and just one more issue to go. I'm enjoying this story. It's a very rapid-paced story. There's a lot in this story. It's not. It's heavy on exposition, although there's a lot going on. It's not always heavy on exposition, but there are moments like when Brainwave Jr. is explaining to the All-Stars who the Ultrahumanite is and what his plans are and how he contacted himself, how the Ultrahumanite of the future contacted the Ultrahumanite of the past. So you've got moments like that, but by the time that arrived, it's kind of like you wanted that. You wanted to know what was going on. And so I thought that was very cool. This is still one of my favorite All-Star Squadron stories. It doesn't completely live up to my memories of it, but I think it's got some really great moments of it, and I love the mix of characters and how they interact and how Roy Thomas kind of weaves everything together. And I love the art. I love what Jerry Ordway and Mike Machlan do, especially some of these splash pages, some of the close-ups, and even especially also their panel layouts, which I assume is mostly Jerry Ordway. It's not just a 9-panel grid or a 6-panel grid or an 8-panel grid. It's very creative, and I think he does an excellent job of the combination of Roy Thomas's words and Jerry Ordway's pencils and Mike Machlan's inks do a wonderful job towards telling this story. That's it for this episode of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be posted on the episode page at davetalkscomics.com. You can send email to dave@davetalkscomics.com. My Twitter handle is Kilmarock. I'm Dave. Thank you for listening.